I feel like Bruce Sutter used a hairdryer on his beard. Was that a thing back then, Dad, when people had beards? They used hairdryers on the beards?
No, there was a big...
what was the thing?
Big scandal when one of the Yankees was using a hairdryer. His name was Joe Pepitone, and everybody made fun of him.
This is a real story?
The Yankees had rules. They had rules about getting dressed like that.
Well, Joe's hair was long for a Yankee. Remember, Yankees couldn't have beards and mustaches and long hair.
Yeah.
It's the same thing now. Harrison Bader, when he moved over to the Mets, grew a beard.
That's gone. Oh, to the Mets, yeah.
Yeah, when he moved to the Mets, he grew one.
And then he hurt his arm?
No. God, shut up.
Hey, everybody, I'm your host, Brendan. Welcome to another episode of Swing Batter, where we look at terrible contracts, and there are just so many to count from. But let's go way, way back in time. Dad, who's on your list for today?
Well, I thought I'd pick somebody my age. I decided to look at the contract of Bruce Sutter.
Who?
And Bruce Sutter, the closer of the 70s, he would come in and close the games, and before there really were closers, Bruce paved the way.
A 70s closer. Well, that can mean a lot of terms to a lot of different people. But for everybody at home, we're talking baseball, and a closer is when you come in the ninth inning and shut it down. And that's what you're saying Bruce did.
He did. And from what I can tell in my research, Bruce Sutter was really the first player who was always a closer. Bruce Sutter never started a game ever. Prior to that, the guys who would save games were starters who failed or starters who got old, and they would try him out there. But Bruce Sutter was a relief pitcher in a different way than they are today. Back in those days, they would bring in their closer in the seventh inning and just make him finish the game. Seventh, eighth inning. They didn't save him for the ninth. If they were in trouble, they would bring him in. So for a guy who, for example, Bruce Sutter in his very second year, he appeared in 62 games. Okay. Pitched 107 innings.
It's not bad.
Nope.
Well, that's way more than 1 inning a game. It's almost 2 every game. So that's the way they used him, and he was good at what he did. And he's got an amazing contract to talk about.
Well, that was also an era back in the day when they didn't have this manager, maybe one of the best managers of all time, Tony Slow Baseball Down La Russa. You pitched 3 pitches, I'm going to exchange you for another pitcher. So back in the day, they just didn't do that. Managers didn't change pitchers out after every batter. They just let them, into your point, let them pitch through their troubles for an inning or 2 or 3.
Right.
It just wasn't the same baseball that we have today. There was no specialist. You wouldn't say Bruce Sutter was a specialist.
No. When La Russa was on the Oakland A's manager and he used Dennis Eckersley as a closer, like Tony La Russa would, Dennis Eckersley never pitched in any inning except the ninth. That's it. And that's the way he used him.
Because at the time, Tony La Russa was too busy using 5 pitchers in the 7th, 8th innings.
Yeah. I wanted about that good old guy, Tony. Let's get right into Bruce. How did Bruce come to be? What do you got?
Bruce started with the Cubs, and they used him out of the bullpen exclusively. First year, he saved 10 games. And then they decided maybe we can use this guy at the end of the games. Now, second year, Bruce Sutter saved 31 games, which is unheard of back then, and had an ERA of 1.34 with the Cubs. Here's a more shocking year. In 1979 with the Cubs, Bruce Sutter saved for, at that time, was an amazing amount, 37 games. Okay, big deal. Do you know the Cubs only won 80? Half their wins, practically, Bruce Sutter closed the game. So for that era, he was the guy that was coming in at the end, and he played 5 years with the Cubs, saving between 37 as his high, but it was always like over 25 saves a year, pitching in the 7th, 8th, 9th innings whenever they needed him. And he was an all-star and recognized as the man to come in at the end of the games. But then it got better. He got traded to the Cardinals. And with the Cardinals, he just continued on this spree. 1 year saving 45 games. ERA was always in the 2s or the 1s. He had 3 bad years, but toward the end of his career. But during his prime, he only had 1 year where his earned run average was over 4. Only one.
And again, today's era of baseball players, and if you're in the 2s, that's amazing. That's amazing ERA. 3s is very acceptable today, and everyone's pretty happy. To have a closer go that long with that kind of consistency year after year after year, it's fantastic. And of course, he wasn't breaking any banks back then. It's not like he demanded a huge salary.
No,
but nobody was at the time.
He was first 9 years. He was with the Cardinals and Cubs, and he was an all-star relief pitcher. The most money he ever made, obviously, is at the end because inflation and stuff like that. His last contract with the Cardinals, he made $1.1 million. He saved 45 games that year with a 154 earned run average. His age was 31, and that's when the picture became a swing batter account. He ended up on the Braves with an amazing contract to go and save the Braves, but they didn't get Bruce Sutter.
Leave it to Ted Turner to be the guy who makes this deal. And if you don't know Ted Turner, he's the one that married to Jane Fonda and took over the Braves, started CNN, owned the television station TNT. TBS would show the Braves all over the country. It was groundbreaking. It was like the first network TV, team was really kind of the Braves.
So here's what he did on the Braves. First year, he did save 23 games, which was down, with an earned run average of 4.48, the highest he ever had. Year 2, he was hurt. He only saw 16 games, 434 earned run average, and he saved 3 games. The third year, he was 14 saves with a 476 earned run average. But I need to tell you that Bruce Sutter, well, let's do, Todd, why don't you tell us about the contract the Braves gave him?
So this is really interesting. So it was $4.8 million over the course of 6 years. Not a big amount of money by today's standards, but you got to keep in mind it's 1984. This was when $4.8 million actually bought you something. Like you could actually buy things for $4.8 million. But there was another $4.8 million that was deferred.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is another $4.8 million that was deferred at 13% interest.
Which, hold on for a second before you blow your mind. Back then, that's very normal. Those interest rates are normal. That's not like today's world.
Dad, when we were living in the house in Little Falls, what was the interest rate on the mortgage on that house?
I believe it was 12% interest on our mortgage.
It was 12%. And I think mortgage prices spiked to somewhere around 16% at a certain point. So 13% interest that it was deferred. And then get this. It would then, after the 6 years was over, would pay him $1.3 million annually for 30 years. This is $44 million over 36 years, this contract. This thing's got swing batter all over it. And Ted Turner's trying to buy himself the last 2 to 3 innings of every single game, basically trying to guarantee that the Braves are going to be able to shut people down. That's what he's looking for. But this was really the first. This was the great thing about this. This was the first major use of deferred payments in Major League Baseball. It got a lot more famous under Bobby Bonilla. You have the Chris Davis, contract that's got all these deferred payments in, but it was really like blowing it out past like active playing years.
So let me ask some numbers questions. So you're saying the contract itself paid him $4 million over the course of 3 years.
4.8 over 6 years.
Over
for
six,
the first
okay.
part, for the active playing time.
And then you're saying it deferred and it was started at 4.8 and it increased the value up to that amount of money, because I'm pretty sure it wasn't 30 something million when he signed it. Is that correct?
It was 4.8, another 4.8 million that was deferred. So it was 9.6 total.
Okay.
But there was another 4.8 million that was deferred at 13% interest.
Well, the reason that happened is Bruce Sutter could only pitch 3 seasons, and he was not good, and he was done. And the Braves owed him another 3 years. So they negotiated this ridiculous contract to get him gone. They said, instead of paying you what we owe you the next 3 years, why don't we defer it over 33 years so that we don't have to pay you as much in the next 3 years, but we don't care if we have to pay you forever. And that's where the contract, you're right, it was the first deferred contract. They're common now. Anybody ever heard of Shohei Ohtani? I mean,
right.
These deferred contracts are common now, but that was the first one. But the numbers were staggering, that you would pay, what is it, $44 million to not
over
pitch,
36 years, yeah.
to not pitch. If you would not pitch, right, we'll give you $44 million. Those of us at the time, it was inconceivable. It was just unheard of.
But you got to keep in mind that they paid him to go away, but initially the contract was split. It was $9.6 million with $4.8 million for 6 years. Now, he wouldn't last the 6 years. So they had to finish that out, but there was the 13% on the other 4.8. And if you take the rule of 72, right? And the rule of 72 is however many, like if you take the interest rate, right? And take 72 divided by the interest rate, that tells you how many years it would take to double your money. So 72 divided by 13. Brendan, you're the math major.
Yep, sure. 72 divided by 13.
72 divided by 13 is
less than
something
6.
like 4.5, right?
It's a little over 5, 6 probably.
72 divided by 13 is 5.5 years. So every 5.5 years, that's going to double. And I'm not paying him $4.8 million. So by the time I get to 6 years at 13%, that 4.8 has become 9.6. And now I'm going to pay him 1.3.
So for those watching, so hold on, for those watching at home, and if you have that lovely thing called a credit card, and it's telling you get 21, 22, 25% interest rates, this guy became a credit card.
It's like a reverse Sutter.
He was, yes, the Sutter, if you can physically become a credit card, which would be great for your life, he did that. Probably got a boat. I had to have a boat.
Yes.
Got to get a boat. Like there's nothing else you should buy other than a boat on this deal. But yeah, once you become the credit card, that must, like he is literally Samuel Jackson, Capital One. But he is that guy. He's like, I got a credit card. I am the credit card. What a great deal for him.
So what? You're aware that when he went into the Hall of Fame?
Tell that story.
Yeah, so in 2006, he went into the Hall of Fame. And he went into the Hall of Fame as the first pitcher to go in the Hall of Fame who never started a baseball game. It's a little trivia question there for those of you who ever go on Jeopardy.
Yeah.
I think as Swing Batter really starts to lay a foundation for you to follow us, one of the things that I really want to start advocating for is the agents to be in the Hall of Fame for making deals like this. Because it's not that the baseball team, like the Braves are fine. Turner, he was fine. Nobody lost anything here. The player won and the agent won. When agents create deals like the Bobby Bonilla deal, like this deal, they need to have a plaque. They've changed the course of history for the future baseball players. There is no Ohtani deal without these deals. And I think these agents need to be honored. And I think an agency Hall of Fame, perhaps. I don't know.
At least a wing.
What we learn with swing batters, a lot of these huge contracts, when you look at them stepping back, you realize these guys got paid not for what they're going to do, but what they did for another team. This guy was great on the Cubs and Cardinals. He got paid. He did nothing for the Braves, and the Braves end up paying him. A lot of our big contracts and stars that we see and say, oh, wow, that's great. If you look at it, understand most of these guys have already played their best ball, and you're going to pay them a lot of money. Some work out, but we have so many that don't that we start a business talking about it.
Hey, and listen, what's the age that we talk about with pitchers where they start to fall off?
45. According to the Mets, it's 45.
No, that's Bartolo Colon. Right around 30, 31 years old. When did he sign this contract?
Yep.
He 31 years old.
Yep, 31 years old.
So, hey, hitters, if it's 29 years old, your best years are behind you. Pitchers, if you're 31, your best years are behind you.
And,
Unless you're Roger Clemens.
There are some history of guys who pitched well into their later years, but they have to adapt. The fastball isn't going to stay a fastball, so you got to change and get smart. A guy like Greg Maddux, he could pitch forever, but it's the guys who pitched into their 40s were like usually knuckleball pitchers who didn't put much strain on their arms to throw a knuckleball. Phil Niekro, I think, pitched into his 40s effectively.
Except for one guy who was a total freak of nature, Nolan Ryan.
Oh.
I mean, I think he could still throw heat today.
Yeah,
I think he still does.
He is a freak of nature. The stuff he did it doesn't even make sense.
Yeah.
Well, the beauty of Swing Batter is we can bring you these memories right to your living room, and we can talk about players that really carved out a new future for all of Major League Baseball players. Because at the end of this story is baseball players, for the majority of the time, were always taken advantage of by the teams. They're before free agency, before any kind of player negotiation. Some of the greatest players had zero leverage when it came to getting a good contract, and they played for the love of game. And now with what you have is the advent of these kind of new era, new rules, new environment, NIL deals, shoe deals, so many deals on top of deals. Players are making more money than they've ever made before, which is fantastic for the player. But it also shows how leaps and bounds the game has gone to help those players achieve success in their own personal life. But for Bruce, he got a boat, got a house, and he is Capital One. So when you say, what's in your wallet? Say, I got a Bruce. I'm your host, Brendan. That's my dad. And that's my brother, Todd. Thanks so much, everybody. Bye now.
Bye.